Hello everyone, welcome back to another session. Here we going to learn about residential status. Subscribe and like my video before we get started. Let's start. Section 6. Residential status. The incidence of tax on any assessee depends upon his residential status under the Act. For all purposes of income tax, taxpayers, individuals and HUF are classified into three broad categories on the basis of their residential status. 1. Resident and ordinarily resident. 2. Resident but not ordinarily resident. 3. Non-resident. Taxpayers other than individuals and HUF are classified into two types on the basis of their residential status, which is 1. Resident. 2. Non-resident. Importance of residential status. The incidence of tax on any assessee depends upon his residential status. If any receipt is chargeable to tax, it has to be seen whether the assessee is liable to tax in respect of that income or not, considering his residential status. The taxability of a particular receipt would thus depend upon not only the nature, capital or revenue, of the income and the place of its accrual or receipt, but also upon the assessee's residential status. The residential status of an assessee must be ascertained with reference to each previous year. A person who is resident and ordinarily resident in one year may become non-resident or resident but not ordinarily resident in another year, or vice versa. The provisions for determining the residential status of assessees are: Section 6, Clause 1. Residential status of an individual. Residential status on the basis of number of days of stay in India. An individual is said to be resident in India in any previous year, if he satisfies any one of the following basic conditions. He has been in India during the previous year for a total period of 182 days or more. Or he has been in India during the 4 years immediately preceding the previous year for a total period of 365 days or more, and has been in India for at least 60 days in the relevant previous year. If the individual satisfies any one of the conditions mentioned above, he is a resident. If both the above conditions are not satisfied, the individual is a non-resident. Additional points need to be noted that the term stay in India includes stay in the territorial waters of India, that is 12 nautical miles into the sea from the Indian coastline. Even the stay in a ship or boat moored in the territorial waters of India would be sufficient to make the individual resident in India. It is not necessary that he stay should be for a continuous period or at any one place in India. Nor is it essential that the stay should be at the usual place of residence, business, or employment of the individual. For the purpose of counting the number of days stayed in India, both the date of departure as well as the date of arrival are considered to be in India. A person may be resident of more than one country for any previous year. You should keep in mind that citizenship of a country and residential status of that country are separate concepts. The residence of an individual for income tax purpose has nothing to do with citizenship, place of birth or domicile. A person may be an Indian national or citizen, but he may not be a resident of India and vice versa. Next. Exceptions. The following categories of individuals will be treated as residents only if the period of their stay during the relevant previous year amounts to 182 days or more. In other words, even if such persons were in India for 365 days during the 4 preceding years and 60 days in the relevant previous year, they will not be treated as resident. Indian citizen who leaves India as a member of the crew of an Indian ship. Indian citizen who leaves India for the purpose of employment outside India. Or Indian citizen or person of Indian origin engaged outside India coming on a visit to India. However, such person, Indian citizen or person of Indian origin, having total income, other than the income from foreign sources exceeding Rs. 0.15 lakhs during the previous year will be Treated as resident in India if 1. The period of his stay during the relevant previous year amounts to 182 days or more. Or 2. He has been in India during the 4 years immediately preceding the previous year for a total period of 365 days or more and has been in India for at least 120 days in the previous year. Additional note. A person is said to be of Indian origin if he or either of his parents or either of his grandparents were born in undivided India. Income from foreign sources means income which accrues or arises outside India. Except income derived from a business controlled in or a profession set up in India, and which is not deemed to accrue or arise in India. Period of stay of crew member Indian citizen of foreign-bound ship. In case of an individual, being a citizen of India and a member of the crew of a foreign-bound ship leaving India, the period or periods of stay in India shall, in respect of such voyage, be determined in the prescribed manner and subject to the prescribed conditions. Rule 126. For the purposes of Section 6 Clause 1, in case of an individual, being a citizen of India and a member of the crew of a ship, the period or periods of stay in India shall, in respect of an eligible voyage, not include the period beginning on the date entered into the continuous discharge certificate in respect of joining the ship by the said individual and ending on the date entered into the continuous discharge certificate in respect of signing off by that individual from the ship. Eligible voyage shall mean a voyage undertaken by a ship engaged in the carriage of passengers or freight in international traffic where 1. For the voyage having originated from any port in India, has as its destination any port outside India, and 2. For the voyage having originated from any port outside India, has as its destination any port in India. Next. Section 6 Clause 1a. Deemed resident in India. An individual, being an Indian citizen, having total income, other than the income from foreign sources, exceeding Rs.15 lakhs during the previous year would be deemed to be resident in India in that previous year, if he is not liable to pay tax in any other country or territory by reason of his domicile or residence or any other criteria of similar nature. This provision would not apply in case of an individual who is said to be resident in India in the previous year under Section 6, 1. Meaning of liable to tax. Liable to tax, in relation to a person and with reference to a country, means that there is an income tax liability on such person under the law of that country, for the time being in force. It also includes a person who has subsequently been exempted from such liability under the law of that country. Additional note. Income from foreign sources means income which accrues or arises outside India, except income derived from a business controlled in or a profession set up in India, and which is not deemed to accrue or arise in India. Next. Resident and ordinarily resident/resident but not ordinarily resident. Additional condition. Only individuals and HUF can be resident but not ordinarily resident in India. All other classes of assessees can be either a resident or non-resident. A not ordinarily resident person is one who satisfies any one of the conditions specified under this section. 1. If such individual has been non-resident in India in any 9 out of the 10 previous years, immediately preceding the relevant previous year, or if such individual has during the 7 previous years immediately preceding the relevant previous year been in India for a period of 729 days or less. In other words, an individual has to satisfy the both additional conditions in order to become ordinarily resident, ROR, in India. Resident in India in any 2 out of the last 10 previous years immediately preceding the relevant previous year. N. Total stay in India for 730 days or more during 7 previous years immediately preceding the relevant previous year. Or 2. A citizen of India, or a person of Indian origin, having total income, other than the income from foreign sources, exceeding Rs. 0.15,00,000 during the previous year, who has been in India for a period or periods amounting in all to 120 days or more but less than 182 days. Or 3. A citizen of India who is deemed to be resident in India under Clause 1a. If such individual is an Indian citizen who is deemed to be resident in India under Section 6 Clause 1a. It may be noted that a deemed resident will always be a resident but not ordinarily resident. Residential status of Hindu undivided family, HUF. Resident. A HUF would be resident in India if the control and management of its affairs is situated wholly or partly in India. Non-resident. If the control and management of the affairs is situated wholly outside India, it would become a non-resident. Meaning of the term control and management. The expression control and management referred to under Section 6 refers to the central control and management and not to the carrying on of day-to-day business by servants, employees, or agents. Control and management means de facto control and management and not merely having the right to control or manage. The business may be done from outside India and yet its control and management may be wholly within India. Therefore, control and management of a business is said to be situated at a place where the head and brain of the adventure is situated. Merely because the family has a house in India, where some of the members reside in the previous year, does not constitute that place as the seat of control and management of the affairs of the HUF unless important decisions concerning the affairs of the HUF are taken at that place. The place of control may be different from the usual place of running the business and sometimes even the registered office of the assessee. This is because the control and management of a business need not necessarily be done from the place of business or from the registered office of the assessee. But control and management do imply the functioning of the controlling and directing power at a particular place with some degree of permanence. A HUF would be resident in India if the control and management of its affairs is situated wholly or partly in India. If the control and management of the affairs is situated wholly outside India, it would become a non-resident. If control and management of its affairs is wholly or partly situated in India, said to be resident. If control and management of its affairs is wholly situated outside India, said to be non-resident. Resident and ordinarily resident or resident but not ordinarily resident. If the HUF is resident, then the status of the Carta determines whether it is ROR or RNOR. For this purpose, additional conditions of Section 6 subsection 6 are relevant. If Carta of resident HUF satisfies both the following additional conditions, as applicable in case of individual, then resident HUF will be resident and ordinarily resident, otherwise it will be resident but not ordinarily resident. 1. Carta of resident HUF should be resident in at least 2 previous years out of 10 previous years, immediately preceding relevant previous year. And 2. Stay of Carta during 7 previous years immediately preceding relevant previous year should be 730 days or more. Residential status of firms, association of persons and body of individuals. In case of resident of firms, association of persons and body of individuals would be resident in India if the control and management of its affairs is situated wholly or partly in India. In case of non-resident, where the control and management of the affairs is situated wholly outside India, the firm, association of persons and body of individuals would become a non-resident. The residential status of the partners or members is immaterial while determining the residential status of a firm's, association of persons and body of individuals. Residential status of a company. A company would be resident in India in any previous year, if it is an Indian company, or its place of effective management, in that year, is in India. Company other than Indian company will be resident in India in any previous year if its place of effective management POEM in that year is in India. Place of effective management to mean a place where key management and commercial decisions that are necessary for the conduct of the business of an entity as a whole are, in substance, made. Residential status of local authorities and artificial juridical persons. In case of resident, local authorities and artificial juridical persons would be resident in India if the control and management of its affairs is situated wholly or partly in India. In case of non-resident, where the control and management of the affairs is situated wholly outside India, they would become non-residents. Section 5. Scope of total income. Section 5 provides the scope of total income in terms of the residential status of the assessee because the incidence of tax on any person depends upon his residential status. The scope of total income of an assessee depends upon the following three important considerations: the residential status of the assessee, the place of accrual or receipt of income, whether actual or deemed, and the point of time at which the income had accrued to or was received by or on behalf of the assessee. 1. Resident and ordinarily resident. ROR. The total income of a resident assessee would consist of income received or deemed to be received in India during the previous year, income which accrues or arises or is deemed to accrue or arise in India during the previous year, and income which accrues or arises outside India even if it is not received or brought into India during the previous year. In simpler terms, a ROR has to pay tax on the total income accrued or deemed to accrue, received or deemed to be received in or outside India. 2. Resident but not ordinarily resident. RNOR. The computation of total income of RNOR is the same as in the case of ROR stated above, except for the fact that the income accruing or arising to him outside India is not to be included in his total income. However, where such income is derived from a business controlled from or profession set up in India, then it must be included in his total income even though it accrues or arises outside India. 3. Non-resident. NR. A non-resident's total income includes income received or deemed to be received in India in the previous year, and income which accrues or arises or is deemed to accrue or arise in India during the previous year. Section 5 specifically provides that an item of income accruing or arising outside India shall not be deemed to be received in India merely because it is taken into account in a balance sheet prepared in India. Further, Section 5 makes it clear that once an item of income is included in the assessee's total income and subjected to tax on the ground of its accrual/deemed accrual or receipt, it cannot again be included in the person's total income and subjected to tax either in the same or in a subsequent year on the ground of its receipt, whether actual or deemed. As per circular, CBDT has clarified that salary accrued to a non-resident seafarer for services rendered outside India on a foreign-going ship, with Indian flag or foreign flag, shall not be included in the total income merely because the said salary has been credited in the NRE non-resident external bank account maintained with an Indian bank by the seafarer. Additional note: all assessees, whether resident or not, are chargeable to tax in respect of their income accrued, arisen, received, or deemed to accrue, arise or to be received in India, whereas a resident alone, resident and ordinarily resident in the case of individuals and HUF, is chargeable to tax in respect of income which accrues or arises outside India. Meaning of income received or deemed to be received. All assessees are liable to tax in respect of the income received or deemed to be received by them in India during the previous year, irrespective of their residential status and the place of its accrual. Income is to be included in the total income of the assessee immediately on its actual or deemed receipt. The receipt of income refers to only the first occasion when the recipient gets the money under his control. Therefore, when once an amount is received as income, remittance, or transmission of that amount from one place or person to another does not constitute receipt of income in the hands of the subsequent recipient or at the place of subsequent receipt. Section 7. Income deemed to be received. The following shall be deemed to be received by the assessee during the previous year, irrespective of whether he had actually received the same or not. Annual accretion to the credit of recognized provident fund. Interest credited to recognized provident fund account of an employee in excess of 9.5% PA. Excess contribution of employer in recognized provident fund, that is the amount contributed in excess of 12% of salary. The taxable transferred balance from unrecognized provident fund to recognized provident fund, being the employer's contribution and interest thereon. The contribution made by the capital gain or any other employer to the account of an employee under a pension scheme under Section 80 CCD. Section 9. Income deemed to occur or arise in India. Income accruing/arising from business connection, etc. Section 9 subsection 1 of clause I. All income accruing or arising, whether directly or indirectly, through or from any business connection in India, or through or from any property in India, or through or from any asset or source of income in India, or through the transfer of a capital asset situated in India, shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Additional note: existence of professional connection amounts to existence of business connection. 4. Example: when foreign lawyer is called upon in India to plead the case in Indian courts. In the case of a business, where all operations are not carried out in India, only such part of the income as is reasonably attributed to the operations in India shall be deemed to arise or accrue in India. Income through transfer of a capital asset situated in India. Capital gains arising through the transfer of a capital asset situated in India would be deemed to accrue or arise in India in all cases, irrespective of the fact whether the capital asset is movable or immovable, tangible or intangible. The place of registration of the document of transfer, etc., is in India or outside, and the place of payment of the consideration for the transfer is within India or outside. Salaries earned in India. Section 9 subsection 1, clause 2. Any income under the head salaries, for services rendered in India, whether such salary income payable for the rest period or leave period and forms part of the service contract of employment, shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Salary includes pension. Salaries payable by Indian government. Section 9 subsection 1, clause 3. Any income chargeable under head salaries payable by the Indian government to a citizen of India for service rendered outside India shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Foreign allowances by the government employer is exempted. Any allowance or perquisite paid or allowed outside India, by the Indian government to a citizen of India, for rendering service outside India is fully exempt. Dividend paid outside India by an Indian company. Section 9 subsection 1, clause 4. Dividends paid by an Indian company outside India is deemed to be accrue or arise in India and would be taxable in the hands of shareholders. Interest. Under Section 9 subsection 1, clause v, an interest is deemed to accrue or arise in India taxable in the hands of recipient if it is payable by 1. the government, or 2. a person resident in India except where it is payable in respect of any money borrowed and used for the purposes of a business or profession carried on by him outside India, or for the purposes of making or earning any income from any source outside India, or 3. a non-resident when it is payable in respect of any debt incurred or monies borrowed and used for the purpose of a business or profession carried on in India by him. Only business. IMP. Interest on money borrowed by the non-resident for any purpose other than a business or profession, will not be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Thus, if a non-resident Mr.A borrows money from a non-resident Mr.B and invests the same in shares of an Indian company, interest payable by Mr.A to Mr.B will not be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Royalty. Section 9 Subsection 1, Clause 6. Royalty will be deemed to accrue or arise in India when it is payable by 1. The government, or 2. A person who is a resident in India except in cases where it is payable for the transfer of any right or the use of any property or information or for the utilization of services for the purposes of a business or profession carried on by such person outside India, or for the purposes of making or earning any income from any source outside India, or 3. A non-resident only when the royalty is payable in respect of any right, property, or information used or services utilized for purposes of a business or profession carried on in India, or for the purposes of making or earning any income from any source in India. Additional points. Lump sum royalty not deemed to accrue arise in India. Lump sum royalty payments made by a resident for the transfer of all or any rights, including the granting of a license, in respect of computer software supplied by a non-resident manufacturer along with computer hardware, under any scheme approved by the government under the Policy on Computer Software Export, Software Development and Training, 1986 shall not be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Meaning of royalty. The term royalty means consideration, including any lump sum consideration but excluding any consideration which would be the income of the recipient chargeable under the head capital gains, for the transfer of all or any rights, including the granting of license, in respect of a patent, invention, model, design, secret formula, or process or trademark or similar property. The imparting of any information concerning the working of, or the use of, a patent, invention, model, design, secret formula, or process or trademark or similar property. The use of any patent, invention, model, design, secret formula, or process or trademark or similar property. The imparting of any information concerning technical, industrial, commercial or scientific knowledge, experience, or skill. The use or right to use any industrial, commercial, or scientific equipment but not including the amounts referred to in Section 44BB containing presumptive tax provisions relating to non-resident engaged in the business of exploration, etc., of mineral oils. The transfer of all or any rights, including the granting of license, in respect of any copyright, literary, artistic, or scientific work including films or videotapes for use in connection with television or tapes for use in connection with radio broadcasting. Consideration for sale, distribution, or exhibition of cinematographic films is covered within the scope of royalty. The rendering of any service in connection with the activities listed above. The definition of royalty for this purpose is wide enough to cover both industrial royalties as well as copyright royalties. The definition specially excludes income which should be chargeable to tax under the head capital gains. Next point. Consideration for use or right to use of computer software is royalty. The consideration for use or right to use of computer software is royalty by clarifying that transfer of all or any rights in respect of any right, property, or information includes and has always included transfer of all or any right for use or right to use a computer software, including granting of a license, irrespective of the medium through which such right is transferred. Next point. Consideration in respect of any right, property, or information. Royalty includes and has always included consideration in respect of any right, property or information, whether or not the possession or control of such right, property, or information is with the payer. Such right, property, or information is used directly by the payer. The location of such right, property, or information is in India. Lastly, meaning of process. The term process includes and shall be deemed to have always included transmission by satellite, including uplinking, amplification, conversion for downlinking of any signal, cable, optic fiber, or by any other similar technology, whether or not such process is secret. Section 9 Subsection 1, Clause 7. Fees for technical services. Any fees for technical services will be deemed to accrue or arise in India if they are payable by 1. The government, or 2. A person who is resident in India, except in cases where the fees are payable in respect of technical services utilized in a business or profession carried on by such person outside India, or for the purpose of making or earning any income from any source outside India, or 3. A person who is a non-resident, only where the fees are payable in respect of services utilized in a business or profession carried on by the non-resident in India, or where such services are utilized for the purpose of making or earning any income from any source in India. Fees for technical services means any consideration, including any lump sum consideration, for the rendering of any managerial, technical or consultancy services, including providing the services of technical or other personnel. However, it does not include consideration for any construction, assembly, mining, or like project undertaken by the recipient, or consideration which would be income of the recipient chargeable under the head salaries. Next topic. Section 9 Subsection 1, Clause 8. Gift. Resident in India. Income arising outside India, being any sum of money, paid by a person to a non-resident, not being a company, or to a foreign company, on or after the first day of April, 2023 to a person not ordinarily resident in India RNOR. Income deemed to accrue or arise in India to a non-resident by way of interest, royalty, and fee for technical services to be taxed irrespective of territorial nexus. Income by way of interest, royalty, or fee for technical services, which is deemed to accrue or arise in India by virtue of Clause V, Clause 6, and Clause 7, of Section 9 Subsection 1, shall be included in the total income of the non-resident, whether or not the non-resident has a residence or place of business or business connection in India, or the non-resident has rendered services in India. Section 9 of Subsection 1 of Clause 1. Business connection in India shall include New York business activity carried out through a person acting on behalf of the non-resident, and such person 1. has and habitually exercises in India an authority to conclude contracts on behalf of the non-resident, or habitually concludes contracts or habitually plays the principal role leading to conclusion of contracts by that non-resident, and the contracts are in the name of the non-resident, or for the transfer of the ownership of, or for the granting of the right to use, property owned by that non-resident, or that non-resident has the right to use, or for the provision of services by the non-resident. 2. Has no such authority, but habitually maintains in India a stock of goods or merchandise, from which he regularly delivers goods or merchandise on behalf of the non-resident, or 3. habitually secures orders in India, mainly or wholly for the non-resident or for that non-resident and other non-residents controlling, controlled by, or subject to the same common control as that non-resident. However, business connection shall not include any business activity carried out through a broker, general commission agent, or any other agent having an independent status, if such broker, General Commission agent or any other agent having an independent status is acting in the ordinary course of his business. Further, where such broker, General Commission agent or any other agent works mainly or wholly on behalf of a non-resident, hereafter in this proviso referred to as the principal non-resident, or on behalf of such non-resident and other non-resident, which are controlled by the principal non-resident, or have a controlling interest in the principal non-resident, or are subject to the same common control as the principal non-resident. He shall not be deemed to be a broker, General Commission agent or an agent of an independent status. Independent status. Where a broker, General Commission agent or any other agent not works mainly or wholly on behalf of a NR or other non-resident under the same common control and management. Keep in mind that where a business is carried on in India through a person referred to in above, only so much of income as is attributable to the operations carried out in India shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Following cases shall not be treated as business connection in India. 1. No income shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India to NR, through or from operations which are confined, limited, to the purchase of goods in India for the purpose of export. 2. No income shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India to NR, engaged in the business of running a news agency or publishing newspapers, magazines, or journals, through or from activities which are confined to the collection of news and views in India for transmission out of India. 3. No income shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India to a non-resident if the operations is confined to shooting of cinematography films in India, but if NR is an individual, he should not be citizen of India. Affirm. No partner should be citizen of India or resident in India. A company. None of the shareholders should be citizen of India or resident in India. 4. In the case of a foreign company engaged in the business of mining of diamonds, no income shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India to it through or from the activities which are confined to the display of uncut and unassorted diamond in any special zone notified by the central government in the official gazette in this behalf. Significant economic presence, SEP, of a non-resident in India shall constitute business connection in India. Significant economic presence, SEP, of a non-resident in India shall constitute business connection in India, and significant economic presence for this purpose shall mean: Point 1. Transaction in respect of any goods, services, or property carried out by a non-resident in India, including provision of download of data or software in India, if the aggregate of payments arising from such transaction or transactions during the previous year exceeds 2 crores. Or, Point 2. Systematic and continuous soliciting of business activities or engaging in interaction with users in India where number of users should be at least 300,000. Further, the transactions or activities shall constitute significant economic presence in India, whether or not the agreement for such transactions or activities is entered in India, or the non-resident has a residence or place of business in India, or the non-resident renders services in India. However, where a business connection is established by reason of significant economic presence in India, only so much of income as is attributable to the transactions or activities referred to in point 1 and 2 above shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India. Students note here: it shall include income from advertisement targeting customers residing in India or accessing advertisement through IPA, that is, Internet Protocol address, located in India. Sale of data collected from persons residing in India or using IPA located in India. Sale of goods and services using data collected from persons residing in India or using IPA located in India.